Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Ether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. The War of the Spark was one of the biggest events to ever hit Magic the Gathering, and that's right up there with the Mending, the pivotal moment that forever changed the fundamental of what we know is a Planeswalker, essentially nerfing them to the ground. As all good calamities go, Bolas's War on Ravnica has shifted a lot of characters in MTG and how we know them and how they developed. And as we begin to see some of these characters in a post-War of the Spark multiverse, we've seen some fall into despair, others find new meaning and purpose in their lives, some find love, and some violently crash out of it. Such is the case with everyone's favorite will they, won't they pseudo-relationship in Magic the Gathering, Chandra, Nalaar, and Nissa Revane. Theirs is an unlikely tale of passion and connection, but did their relationship ever survive the terrible rating that is War of the Spark? How did it all begin? Well, that's what we're going to learn about in this video today, guys. Yes, this is the complete history and the future of the Chandra-Nissa ship in Magic the Gathering. And if you guys are enjoying the content, please be sure to support the Ether Hub by leaving this video a like, subscribing, and of course ticking that notification bell so you always know when we go live with a new video. And with that, let's get back to the lore. The budding love of Chandra and Nissa began with the formation of the Gatewatch itself. The Gatewatch were formed to protect the multiverse from threats that could span the vast blind eternities, including evil planeswalkers and interplanar threats like the Eldrazi Titans. In fact, it was the threat of the Eldrazi which spurred the creation of this group, as its founding members met on the plane of Zendikar to face the Titans Ulamog and Kozilek before it consumed that world and moved on to their next meal. The ordeal was, of course, stressful for the Gatewatch's original green-aligned planeswalker, Nissa Revane, as she was a native of Zendikar, and who knew of the slumbering Eldrazi Titans locked beneath her home, yet was left powerless to stop them on her own. Luckily, she wasn't alone. Jace Beleren, Gideon Jura, and of course, Chandra Nalaar were there to lend aid. New friendships bloomed, old ones were rekindled as the Gatewatch was formed, working together to bring low these Eldrazi Titans. But this isn't a lore video on the formation of the Gatewatch. No, the Gatewatch was just the vessel in which Nissa and Chandra had their feelings grow. In truth though, this sense of an attraction didn't really occur until the epic, penultimate fight between the Gatewatch and the two Eldrazi Titans, as the group pulled the very essence of these forces of nature into Zendikar itself. Nissa and Chandra were the ones commanding a magnificent spell that would finally end them. Nissa worked the ley lines of Zendikar to channel its mana into binding the Titans' physical forms to the plane, but also channeled that mana into Chandra Nalaar, who used it to cast the biggest fireball spell the multiverse had ever seen. In that moment, as Nissa's mind melded with Chandra's, as they shared mana, thoughts, feelings, consciousness, they were one being in two bodies, a feeling neither could ever explain, but one that left a lasting impact on each of them. This power was enough to incinerate the Titans Ulamog and Kozilek, leaving nothing but charred chunks of their flesh raining down on Zendikar. The Gatewatch were victorious, and while at the time no one could really put it into words, a relationship neither could deny formed between Chandra and Nissa. The Gatewatch, with this new relationship happening, then tracked down the third and final Eldrazi Titan, Emrakul, on the plane of Innistrad. We didn't get too much more development here on Nissa and Chandra's relationship, but what we did see was the development of some key character motivations. The Gatewatch followed a similar plan to deal with Emrakul as they did on Zendikar, but that plan failed miserably. What ended up happening though is that Emrakul attacked the Planeswalkers' minds and emotions, creating doubt and panic. Most noticeably in Chandra, who already was a character almost defined by her inability to deal with negative emotions and self-esteem. The Gatewatch would ultimately prevail, but only through the intervention of Liliana Vess, who also joins the Gatewatch at this point, and she would go on to be quite the homewrecker for this young couple. And no, not in the way you may think. Still, at this point, Chandra expresses feelings towards Nissa, but it stops at words alone. They're not really a thing yet, but the path is right there. Where we see a big jump in this shipping comes from our journey on Kaladesh, as the group tries to unwind after saving 2 different planes from sheer destruction. Chandra wants to travel to her home of Kaladesh to deal with decidedly more domestic issues happening on her home plane. The Gatewatch doesn't feel that it's in their group's creed to get involved in planar politics, even if it is for the world of a friend, so most stay behind. But Chandra is followed by Liliana Vess and Nissa Revane. This is where we see the first signs of some dissent between Chandra and Nissa, as Liliana tries to encourage and then manipulate some pretty bad behavior from Chandra. She whispers in the pyromancer's ear, telling her how good it feels to let go and let primal fury guide your hand, to strike at your enemies without mercy, quickly and decisively. Nissa doesn't approve of such rash actions, to carelessly scorch homes all for a singular personal goal, that goal being revenge. This is where we see the first real sign that Nissa showed similar feelings back to Chandra. Because remember, Nissa is an elf from Zendikar, more passant than passionate. We never got a clear understanding of her true feelings. Chandra being a red-aligned pyromancer, well, she was pretty upfront about her emotions and feelings. While it was always sort of implied that Nissa also felt the same, it was never outwardly spoken. But in this instance, we can see that Nissa does care for Chandra. However, Chandra now respects and admires Liliana's resolve, her ability to make her own way, and Chandra wants to emulate that. Still, it left Chandra in a pretty weird position. Though she respected Liliana, Chandra really loved Nissa, and that would become even more clear as the two actually talk in quiet moments amidst their adventures on Kaladesh. Nissa teaches Chandra to meditate, chant, calm herself before her rage topples over and she loses control of her fire magic. In the past, Chandra had let her passion get the better of her, letting loose torrents of fire without any directed path. While her education at the Carol Keep by Jaya Ballard taught her to loosely direct her spells, it was Nissa who taught her to keep control, no matter the situation. It was this imagery she used, picturing a candle in the middle of a lake. It's actually been a long time since I've read this story, but it was some chant and meditation like that, which really calmed Chandra down. This came into major play when Chandra and Nissa faced Baral, the Kaladashian official who murdered Chandra's father and who tried to kill them all throughout this story. Though Baral tried to goad Chandra into losing control, which he believed would put him at an advantage in a fight, Nissa calmed her down using that same type of meditation, giving the couple the edge in this fight and a very restrained victory. Before Kaladesh, there may have been sparks and unspoken feelings, but after, Chandra made her position very clear. She loved Nissa Revane, but Nissa, being who she is, didn't follow that step forward. Not yet. The Gatewatch then traveled to Amonkhet. There, Nissa and Chandra did some investigating on their own, showing more how they are sort of following into this couple teamwork mentality. They basically were doing everything together at this point. They uncovered the unknown past of Amonkhet as Nissa communed with the mana ley lines of this world, speaking to the essence of Amonkhet. They found out that Bolus had come to the world at one point and devastated it, but still kept it around forever altered, a truth that would be revealed later on. Nissa, though, would find another reason to butt heads with Liliana, as she had previously with Liliana trying to quote-unquote corrupt Chandra. As the group helped her in killing one of her demon lords who was conveniently living on Amonkhet as a lackey of Bolus, Nissa couldn't help but feel like they were manipulated by the necromancer for her own needs. A point that would be pursued further as the same thing would be asked of the Gatewatch on Dominaria. Yes, after helping Liliana Vess kill a demon lord on Amonkhet, and after the group was utterly destroyed by Bolus on Amonkhet, Liliana bails on the Gatewatch, only to show up again conveniently on Dominaria with another demon lord she's looking to kill. It all seemed just a little out of sorts for Nissa. This was the pivotal moment for Nissa and Chandra's relationship, when Nissa renounced her vows to the Gatewatch and quit the Planeswalker organization. She quit because the group, despite feeling manipulated by Liliana Vess, would again help her kill a demon lord of hers, Belzenlok. Nissa had had enough. She could not go on providing aid to a group who was now enabling Liliana Vess, who Nissa believed could be an equal threat compared to Nicol Bolas. With that, she quit the Gatewatch and Chandra was devastated. To Nissa, it looked like Chandra had picked Liliana over her own principles. Their relationship would never be the same after that. Still, nothing brings old flames back together quite like a war, especially one you're forced to fight in. Even before the Planeswalkers were all sucked onto Ravnica as part of the spark-stealing plans of Nicol Bolas, Jace traveled to Zendikar to try and re-recruit Nissa back into the group before their final fight, but Nissa declined. Yet, as the interplanar beacon is switched on, awkwardly Nissa is brought to Ravnica anyway and is trapped there by the Immortal Sun. Like it or not, Nissa is fighting with the Gatewatch one last time. Even still, Chandra and Nissa don't have any time to really talk about unresolved emotions, as they're given different tasks to help in the plane's defense. Nissa goes on a diplomatic mission in an attempt to have the last remaining neutral guilds of Ravnica join in the fight, while Chandra joins another group to find and shut down the Immortal Sun artifact so that some innocent planeswalkers could escape with their lives. Both groups perform their duties without fail. Chandra gets some revenge on Dovin Bane, a villain from Kaladash's storyline, while Nissa animates the entire guild hall of the Selesnyan Conclave, Vitu-Ghazi, to fight the Dread Horde minions of Bolas. Together, the combined efforts of these planeswalkers, along with current and former members of the Gatewatch, are able to push back Bolas and defeat him for good. The multiverse is spared, and finally love can prevail. And while love might be able to survive a war, it can't survive retconning and terrible writing. The most notable part of Chandra's relationship goals from the actual War of the Spark novel is the revelation that Chandra isn't attracted to females, like, at all. It's written in a ham-fisted way, not in character at all, especially as we had so much build-up for this relationship. Oddly enough, in War of the Spark, it's written out that Chandra is attracted to big, muscled, manly men. And no, that wasn't sarcasm, that was a direct line. Big, muscled, manly men. Probably one of the worst constructed lines ever to explain the complexity of the nature of attraction in a character literally built to have complex relationships. This was because in the past it's true Chandra had feelings either physically or emotionally towards Gideon Jorah, who many would say is a muscly, manly man. But it wasn't that simple, as she had more of an emotional and physical attraction to Nissa throughout several sets of development. Basically, the writer threw all of that away and just declared, no, actually she only has a thing for big muscled men. So you can start to see where there's a lot of contention with the writing in War of the Spark. At the end of the War of the Spark, Nissa finds it in herself to rejoin the Gatewatch, realizing that their mission is a just and noble one, that even if they fail at times, they do try their best for the good of all, and that's something that Nissa can really get behind. Chandra, in witnessing the death and sacrifice of Gideon Jorah, admits to everyone that she in fact loved him as more than just a brother as previously suspected. How much more, we'll never know. But right after that, Nissa and Chandra share a touching moment where, again, Chandra professes feelings for Nissa. Feelings that Nissa, for the first time, could put into words. Yes, it was love. Yet still, the mood was sour as grief and joy were mixed. As we enter into the follow-up story of Forsaken, the wrap-up for the War of the Spark novel, we explore the true end to the Nissa and Chandra ship. They both meet again on Theros, as the Gatewatch holds a memorial for Gideon. Here, the two talk briefly. Nissa invites Chandra to come with her to Zendikar. They may not be a couple for a myriad of reasons, but they were still true friends. However, with the loss of Gideon, Chandra spirals into depression, self-pity, and doubt. The same exact feelings that plagued her youth. This idea that she just didn't do enough to save everyone, to even save her friends. The conversation turns cold, as if their friendship too was coming to a close. Nissa leaves for Zendikar, and Chandra goes out to find her own purpose. This is when we get the kill shot for this love story, the true end of the Nissa-Chandra ship. And boy, did that ship sink quick. Here are just a few direct passages from the novel, just so you get the full brunt of this end. Nissa, Chandra said, hoping that just for a moment, for just one little moment, the sight of the elf would make the pyromancer's cheeks burn, make her heart skip a beat, give her those flutters. But no, Chandra had never been into girls. Her crushes, and she'd had her fair share, were mostly the brawny and decidedly male types, like Gids. But there had always been something about Nissa Revane specifically, something the two of them shared in that great chemical mix, arching between them like one of Raoul Zarek's lightning bolts, that had thrilled her from the moment they first met. Now everything's different. It was over before it ever had a chance to begin. Maybe they had missed their moment. On Ravnica, in the wake of Gideon's death and Bolus, they had admitted to each other that they loved, but both of them knew deep down they were only speaking platonically. And that is, or at least was, the relationship between Chandra and Nissa, broken and shattered before it even had a real chance to develop to its conclusion. Now, this writing in War of the Spark by Greg Weiserman was so bad and didn't really connect with the previously laid out lore for these characters that Wizards of the Coast and the author themselves actually had to come out and apologize for this retconning, but nothing has really been said otherwise about their relationship. There hasn't been an official statement on if this relationship is going to be revived or if it's going to even continue forward in the lore. Right now, all we have is the information that we got in War of the Spark, which decidedly killed the Nissa-Chandra ship. Now, to me, this isn't exactly about axing a lesbian relationship in Magic the Gathering. Now, of course, it's important to have those sorts of relationships in a card game that's, advertised to everybody to include those diverse groups, right? And that's completely fine. But for me, as a Vorthos, it's really hard for me to parse why this writing took a 180 on these two characters and their pretty much well-defined relationship, or at least the groundings of a relationship that had been building over several different sets of storyline. The continuity just isn't there for them to break for almost no reason. There was no real development that led Nissa and Chandra to this decision. There was no real reason for why they had to break it off. It was really just like, wow, Chandra just, really likes muscles and Nissa's just ain't buff enough for her. So Chandra just walks away. That's pretty much the all-encompassing reason for why this relationship had to end. And for me, that just doesn't seem like a very compelling reason in the story. In a post-War of the Spark world with writing that can only, presumably, get better, you would assume that maybe they'll have a chance to revisit this relationship and maybe reestablish it in the lore, but we can only wait and see. And that's gonna do it all for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please, by all means, go ahead and support our content by leaving this video a like, commenting down below, and of course, hitting that notification bell so you always know when we have a new video go live. Really goes a long way in supporting our growth, guys. Of course, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!